Alrighty, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this professional learning opportunity. I'm Loretta Rupert, the Business Development Coordinator for NCEA, and I will be facilitating this webinar today. Just a few housekeeping notes as people are joining us. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to use the Q&A window, and we will monitor your questions and try to answer them in an allotted time. At the end of this session, I will share a link to the online survey and how to receive a certificate for completion of this webinar. Today's webinar is Building Bridges, Strategies to Support Spanish-Speaking Students in English-Only Schools. It is brought to you by Renaissance, and our speaker today is Dr. Carol Johnson, and she is joined by Maria Delamo, our Director of Hispanic and Latino Engagement for NCEA. In this webinar, you will learn several practical research-backed strategies that incorporate Spanish-speaking students' home languages as a means of supporting both the English language development and their academic achievement. Thank you for joining us today. We also thank Dr. Julie Vogel for joining us today. And to get started, I will lead us in prayer. So let us take a moment to center ourselves, especially on this historical day of our Pope being chosen, our leader of our church, based in the United States. So we begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. O God, eternal shepherd, who govern your flock with unfailing care, grant in your boundless fatherly love a pastor for your church, who will please you by his holiness and to show watchful care through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. I will now turn it over to Dr. Carol Johnson, and thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Loretta. Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is such an emotional day. Obviously, when this webinar was arranged, there was just no way of predicting what would happen today. And I found myself very emotional watching the news, as I'm sure you've been. And I thank you for being here, despite the fact that you could be somewhere else. So I'm going to start this webinar. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. All right, everybody can see this okay? Because all I can see is my slides, so I'm hoping that's a yes. Ironically, also, when I wrote this presentation, I had no idea that there would be this amazing announcement today with Pope Leo, and that he would also talk about building bridges, and I thought that was a gift, so I'm very grateful for that. I am going to talk today about building bridges with respect to strategies for supporting Spanish-speaking students in English-only classrooms, and I really thank you for being here. I thought I would start off with my own history. And I am a child of Catholic school, as you can see, and this is the path I walked to school. I lived in Addison, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. And it was an amazing experience. So I went through there for grades 1 through 8, and it was only 1 through 8 because my parents could not afford tuition for the high school, which, if you happen to be in that area, don't know where you guys are, it would be Driscoll High School. That's the one it was at the time. But my experience there, you can hear me okay, right?
I can't see your slides.
Oh, no.
So your slides for some reason are not appearing, so I'm not sure what's going on, but we probably...
Okay, let me try again.
Okay.
Let me just try again and see what
Maria,
happens.
can you see them and it's just me, or can you not?
No, I cannot see them.
Oh, thank you for telling me. Okay, now let me see if I have... Okay, now you can see my screen, but now you need...
There we go.
There we go.
Well,
thank you for stopping me quickly.
There you go. Perfect.
There we go.
So
Now
they're not in present. There we go. That's
There
it.
we go.
Now we're golden. This is beautiful.
Oh, thank you, thank
Thank
you,
you, Carol.
thank you. Oh, that makes it easier because all I could see were slides on my end, and I thought, oh my gosh, I hope they can see it. Anyway, thank you for your patience, everyone. So I am showing you this is actually the path I took to school every day for 8 years. At the time when I was young, obviously, I thought it was a bazillion miles, but in fact, it was only half a mile. You just never know. But I wanted to share with you that the amazing things that I personally got out of Catholic school that I know you already know, but sometimes you might forget that this is what you are giving your students that is amazing. The first is I'm old enough to have grown up when Mass was in Latin. Let me say that. And I was fascinated by languages. And so in my 8 years there, I was introduced to both Latin and French. That's amazing. That's an amazing experience in school.
Mhm.
So many kids today don't get that. And so I needed to share that with you. I needed to also tell you how I felt my life related to the children about whom we're talking today. In my home, I had very loving parents, monolingual English speakers who had no background in language or anything. In fact, it was a very blue collar family. There were no books in my home. I never saw my parents read a book ever in my entire childhood. There was therefore no academic language spoken, but I need to share with you as a reminder of what you are giving your students today is that it is thanks to that Catholic education I hold a PhD today. Think about that. That's what you are offering the children. They don't have to have a PhD. They can get whatever they want. And that's the life you are setting up for them by this amazing education. So I needed to share that. And for today, it's more emotional than ever just because of the announcement. Alrighty. So in your classroom, we're talking about a classroom where instruction is in English. Therefore, when we say that, we mean the expectation is for the children to achieve in English. That's what we're talking about. So in my case, the one advantage that I had was I came to school speaking English. It certainly wasn't a high level of English. It was very working class English, but I came with that. So I didn't have that other challenge going on. But when we say instruction in English and achievement in English, what we mean is that their knowledge and skills will be demonstrated in English. That's the outcome we're looking for all the students in the classroom where instruction is in English only. Now, I'm going to go through today's presentation. I'm going to move that out of the way, see if I can clear that out a little bit. Hold on. Well, anyway, what I want to say then, now, if we're talking about a student who comes to your classroom where the home language is Spanish, all those other expectations still apply. So we want to make sure that we find a way to bridge the asset that that student brings, language, knowledge, culture, family, etc., and helps transfer that over to achievement in that classroom where we're asking the student to achieve in English. So I wanted to say this up front that this is an approach that we take at Renaissance over and over. We say the students that come with another language bring assets, and our challenge is to find a way to build on those assets. Alrighty, so I named that little girl Sophia because I really love that name. And I decided, this is so ironic. Again, here we have Pope Leo talking about bridges, and I had already written this, and I went, oh my God, thank you. Thank you, because bridges are everything in life. And I want to show you how, using a specific technique and strategy, you could build a bridge for Sophia in your classroom and take her from her Spanish home language, heritage, culture, knowledge, etc., add that to her current level of English because the instruction is in English. So we have to make sure that she is able to comprehend and learn in English and help her move to grade level content. Because when we come to a classroom not yet proficient in the language of instruction, we struggle to process grade level instruction. Okay, has anyone here ever been in that setting? Let me ask you that. If you've been in a classroom yourself where instruction was in a language that you were not fully proficient in. Me too. And anybody else, you find that you get stuff out of it. You get the gist, depending on how your language proficiency is, but you know you have gaps. You know that you're not getting everything. And so that's again the challenge here is to make sure that we find ways to help support that gap filling. Okay, this is Sophia. Here's what we know about Sophia. And again, I made this as a sample student. I want you to know that I have been specific with Sophia, but I'm hoping that you'll be able to generalize this to students at different levels, different languages, et cetera, different grade levels, different English language proficiency levels, different home languages, et cetera. So I'm going to use one example walking you through. So Sophia's home language is Spanish and her instructional language is English. Her English language proficiency level, and I chose WIDA as the measurement because that covers the most states, but consider that this could be TELPAS, this could be LPAC, this could be ALPA 21, know that. Okay, but I chose WIDA, and I chose WIDA level 2 specifically because that's an earlier level of language acquisition, language proficiency that can make it even more challenging for the teacher to meet that student's needs. And so I hoped in this that if I chose a student at that level, again, you would be able to see to notice after you see this presentation, oh, okay, I see how I can move up a level for a different student as necessary. Anyway, so that's the reason I decided on a level 2 for her. And in this case, I also know that her reading level in English. Okay, so if you already use, for example, a star reading assessment or some other English assessment, you know the reading range of that student at that time. And that's really important that we understand these things about the students so that we can meet them where they are, always for the purpose of getting them to the grade level achievement we're looking for. Now, again, I'm going to have to move this, and I gave just a general description of what a student at that level can do. So again, whatever language proficiency assessment you use, consider this as a generic description. So students at her level can do a basic expression of ideas. They can generally express ideas, may attempt to connect them through fluency and comprehensibility, see how they are at the beginning levels of connecting dots for themselves through the language that they have. Okay, and so that's just a generic overview of how I envisioned this sample student today. Here's the most important reality and important thing to know for our English language learners. If in your state you refer to this group of students as emerging bilinguals, whatever term you use, we're talking about students who are coming with a home language other than English to the classroom. The reality is this, and this is decades of research. The two languages of our bilingual children are always active in their brain. Always. This research actually started way back in the 1980s when this field of language acquisition started. So it is actually, I'll share with you research that is international. It is so well known at this time that for students who are bilingual, both languages are always going on. They have this amazing repertoire of language, knowledge, culture, everything up there. And our goal is to tap it. Okay, so one of the most common techniques and terms used today with respect to how do we tap that is we in fact make sure we engage both of those languages where we can. So the term used today that is Ofelia Garcia's term, who coined that, is translanguaging. And according to Ofelia Garcia, translanguaging, notice across languages, allows students to use their entire repertoire to understand and engage with content, thus leading to deeper comprehension and more meaningful learning experiences. That's how you get the outcomes you're looking for, is you find a way to take advantage of everything your student brings, even if you don't speak their language. And I am going to share with you that my experience as a language teacher and language learner, language researcher, all those things, because since I was in Catholic school, that's what I loved. Just to be candid, as a child, my experience has been you don't have to speak every language, but you work really hard with every asset that you have and your students have, and together you are able to bridge gaps. So I want to share that with you. It's such a rewarding experience. So having said that, I'm going to focus really on translanguaging strategies. And how do we support this group of students in English-only instruction? So the strategies I'm going to show today really are very easy on both you and the student, because one of the other perspectives I always come from is If I come in and give you, 10, 15 different potential strategies, that's fine, but I believe you're probably already busy. And so what I need to share with you is how I learned, not just myself as a teacher, but through research to say, okay, these are the critical components that I want to help someone grasp and let them know that this could be done easily, not taking up classroom time, even if they don't want it to. So even just as a homework assignment, but still have great impact in the classroom for your students. And that's really my focus always. So we're going to talk about bilingual glossaries, cognates. Those are words that generally, if you're not familiar with the term, cognates between languages look alike, but they don't always sound the same especially to early learners. Okay. And then we're going to try to build on the students' existing background knowledge because all of that matters, especially because of one of those first slides I shared with you. We're talking about trying to combine language, knowledge, and skills in one language. Okay. So this is the most succinct definition there is of what it takes to acquire more language. And the reality of helping our students who come with an additional language to the classroom achieve in the English classroom is we have to help them not just acquire more knowledge, we have to help them acquire more language so that they can then demonstrate that knowledge. So at the core of this is helping facilitate the acquisition of more language. And the way that happens is we present students with content at their level where they understand enough of it and or most of it. So they build on it. Remember, if the gap is too big, it's overwhelming. If the gap is too small, they learn nothing. Nobody does. No student does. It has to be that just right gap. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do. Okay. If you speak Spanish, please don't answer this question. I know, Maria. But I will ask you this. If you don't speak Spanish, do you understand what this is saying? I don't. My Spanish is not at this high a level. I'm going to be candid and tell you. I don't know what this is saying because I don't know enough Spanish. Flat out. And I want to share with you because it's important to have a sense of what level this is before I also just move forward, that this is a grade equivalent text written at a 5th grade second month. Spanish. If you have STAR, you know what ATOS is too. Okay, 5th grade second month. Ironically, this book is recommended for grades 2 through 4 by the publisher. And I say that to you because it's really important that we look at the actual grade equivalent level of a book as opposed to what grade it's recommended for, because authors, publishers don't necessarily control for grade level vocabulary in their texts. It happens over and over. I have actually seen 3rd grade science texts that analyze at a 7th grade equivalent level. It doesn't occur to them the same way. And so when we're talking about making sure we get texts for examples to our students to help connect, bridges, we want to make sure we get texts at their level. And therefore the grade equivalent is really important because that relates to their ZPD. Okay, that's why I wanted to bring this up to give us all this idea of what it's like if you put a text in front of me that you think is a 2nd grade level, because that's what the publisher recommends it to be, for on the low end. And you think, well, I'm a 5th grader. That's a 2nd grade book, see how that would be easy to put in front of me and yet not realize that is way beyond my capability. So I wanted to share that just to give us all that experience for those of us that haven't had it. Okay, having said that, how are we going to do this? I like to start with the concept, the content, the standard I am focused on. I don't like to go global. I don't like to start with, well, they need more language. I think that's very, very fuzzy. I don't like to go with, well, they need to write better. That's really, really fuzzy. Okay, I like to start personally with what standard am I trying to teach in my classroom so that I'm very specific in this example about supporting that student, Sophia, who reads at a ZPD of 1.5 to 2.5 and a fifth grade classroom, and this is the standard I have to help her achieve. You can see that. And she's probably got a fifth grade textbook. Okay, but we know that she can't read at that level, so we need to help make sure we bridge that gap for her because she will read at that level if we bridge it correctly. Okay, all right. Now, I also believe that as teachers, we are super busy and we need to get the most bang for the buck. I mean, in all candor, I don't have a bunch of extra time when I'm teaching. I just don't, and I want to do the best possible for my students. So I immediately connect any standards together if I can. If I'm only working on language arts and it's English language arts, okay, then I'd start there. But I decided to give you this example of starting from science and going, okay, the science standard is this. The topic is, and this is from the next generation science standards, by the way. Matter cycles between the air and soil and among plants, animals. Okay, I have a general idea of that. But if I want to make sure that Sophia grasps this beyond simply oh, I've got the gist of it, I want to connect to now my language arts and go, okay, what does it take then to express that or to understand that when it is expressed? So we're talking receptive and productive skills there, right? And the language arts standard that I found that worked for fifth grade, I have Sophia in the fifth grade, by the way, is will explain relationships or interactions. Perfect. I went to my language arts standards and I said that English arts standard will work with that science standard. Perfect. And then I said, okay, she's at a WIDA 2. Remember, I told you she's a lower level student. And I went to that standard and said, oh, this is a typical standard for science for students at a WIDA 2 in grades 4 to 5. We want them to use key terms related to the phenomenon, which means we're going to ask her to use the academic terms. Think about that, the academic terms that the kids at grade level are also learning from their textbook. So see how we're connecting all this together to make sure that we meet her needs with this very specific standard. And over here, I have a descriptor of her English language proficiency level. You can see that. So I keep it all together. Okay, now I could do this with another student too, and so could you. This is a student at a different WIDA level, but it just makes the presentation just too funky and too complex. You will be able to see all of this when you get the presentation anyway, the PowerPoint, and you can connect the dots then for your students and apply this to your specific situation. But I also did one step further. I went back to the WIDA standards and said, what is a typical output for a student at this level, grade 4 to 5, WIDA level 2, which is emerging, which is a lower level of language proficiency. It's a second level, okay? This is typical of sentence structure that we would expect from a student at this level. Okay, so all of those things about this topic, in fact. So those things give me ideas about what's realistic for, what's realistic for Loretta, I saw Loretta down there. What's realistic for Sophia, okay, and how I'm going to move forward with this. So all of this looks like a lot of work. It's not. I'm going to show you how to apply this. All right, we're going to build a bridge, and the way I'm going to show you how to do this is with a digital library called Mayan. And I put the 4 icons up there for the language domains because I always want to remember that a good digital library will facilitate practice of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. It's really important with our students who come with another home language, an additional home language. It's really important that we understand that they must be developing oral language skills. We cannot just focus on especially reading and writing. The extent to which we, in fact, build oral language skills through these activities is the extent to which we will see better reading and writing. Okay, and so it's really important that we keep focused on that. And this is the example I have today through Mayan. So I'm going to show you that. Okay, what does that look like? So I am talking about what we consider scaffolding supplemental reading. However, sometimes when we talk about scaffolding, we're thinking about where they are now. Here's a scaffold, here's a scaffold, and here's a scaffold, and we then hit grade level. I'm going to look at it from a different perspective. The way I want to see you scaffold this is based on the language level of the student right now. And no matter what their level is right now, they have to understand most of what they hear and read. That goes back to the research that I showed you at the beginning. If you want this language to grow, you have to make sure the text that you supply as a supplemental is at that student's level. Otherwise, too easy, they learn nothing. Too hard, they get very little. Okay, so we're going to ask the student to select a student's text. You may get to the point where they select it too, but right now we'll pretend that you're selecting it. Okay, and we want to make sure that the student instruction is you listen to and read the text. Notice we're getting both receptive skills, listening and reading at the same time. Really important for students who are at the lower levels of language proficiency. Now, digital books allow for interactive reading. So we are going to have the student interact with this book, and I will show you. And that is because we don't just want the student to listen to and read pages. We need the student to interact in a very specific way with the book so that they learn new vocabulary, they learn new grammatical structures, they have a personalized dictionary for themselves. They are connecting notes, taking notes along the way. Notice all of the interaction that the student's going to do with the text. The biggest reason is we don't want this just to be a one-term, one-time activity. We want to make sure that every single moment they spend is focused on helping them transition this knowledge, this language, this skill, everything from short-term to long-term memory. We want them to own this long-term so that it's theirs. Okay, so after they do that initial work with the book, and these are not huge, long books, okay? I want you to see, you'll see that. We want them to now read the book. Now read the book start to finish without interruption. You've done the pre-reading, you've done the pre-vocab work, you've done all of that. Now read the book as a regular reader. And there's one more thing. So notice this is all student-centered, all of it. Then we want them to take a book quiz. Almost every book has a quiz for comprehension. There have been a couple of exceptions I've found, which is the reason I put in parentheses, if available. But that is super important because what we know about growing language is that if they understand it, they're growing. And that's the way to verify their understanding. What you're asked to do is simply review the quiz scores afterwards. That's it, you as the teacher. Finally, there's all kinds of other post-reading options. And you know all those. All right, these are the books I chose for Sophia. Now, remember, I know her ZPD, her reading range. It is 1.5 to 2.5. Okay, notice I'm starting at the left, right in the middle of that. Right there, 2.2. I actually put on the page also for you how many pages are in these books and how long the recording of the book takes. So these are not books heavy with text. These are books with really critical text. So that's the reason I first put that up there and I was like, oh man, 4 books, that's going to sound like a lot to ask a student to do for one simple standard. But notice that. Those don't take long to listen to and read. Okay, so I wanted you to see that. But notice I started off with an English one, food chain and web. Okay, because that was that standard we're talking about. Okay, food, transfer of matter, etc. First one's English. The second one is Spanish. It's a little past her current reading level, but we were talking her reading level in English. This is a normal child from a Spanish-speaking home who can listen to this book in Spanish and learn the information, the content from it. Just like if she were watching a special on TV, a PBS special, or a documentary, or a movie. This is auditory also. So even though this child may not have been taught decoding skills in Spanish, which we know are so beautiful compared to English, but she's in an English only instruction, we know that she can listen to this and learn this knowledge. So notice what we're doing here. Now we're going to take her to the English version of that book. Okay, so see how we're moving this very intentionally. Okay, you can stop at any point. I wanted to give 4 examples to give you an idea of how to move her up. Okay, so see how now the final English one is just outside her reading range. Okay, now let's look at those books then. All right, this is the first book. It's a reading range 2.2, 2.2 grade level. Okay, notice what I'm asking her to do, and I'm showing you on the screen what I had in that table that you saw. It's much easier to see now in the book, much easier. She's highlighting the words that are new to her, the words she doesn't know. And I say that because as a language learner, language teacher, both, I want you to know that I never, ever could predict which words each student knew and did not know. This is personalized. So you may have 5 students in your class with this same book and highlighting different words. But that's what this is about. This is about meeting the individual student's level need right there. On the right side of the screen, you see that I have started a personal dictionary for that student. It's that student's personal dictionary. Okay, that student can put in there whatever he or she, Sophia in this case, wants. It's hers. But there's something else that's really important about this that I want to share, that personal dictionary. The first is, you may not notice initially, but I have asked her to alphabetize the words she's put in there. Now, the reason I've done that is because this is actually a live dictionary. I don't know about you, but when I was a language learner, I was always asked to keep a notepad, a little notebook, in fact, with new words I was learning. The challenge with that was I could never go back and find words, as many as I put in there, and we want to make sure that this is a live experience for Sophia. Okay, so we ask her to alphabetize because when she goes in there and alphabetizes, she can find words. We also let her put, if you want to put a sentence in about it, whatever you want to do, this is for you. And notice she's got a little note over there that to herself, what she's learning. Plants use energy to make their own food. Notice she's paraphrased a little bit. She doesn't have to, but she has. And these are really important things for her to do. Notice the interaction with this book that's going on. Okay, and that's just one page. All right, here's the next page. Here we get another word. Okay, notice the other words are pretty high frequency. And at her level, she knows a lot of high frequency vocabulary, but the words she's tending to pick up are academic words. She can pick up other words too, make no mistake. But this is her version of what is working for her. She made another note. She didn't need to add any more words, or she did. It's up to her. She can go, oh, wait a minute, I don't need that one now. Get rid of it. Totally up to her. Then she's going to go back, read that book. She's going to take a quiz. The quiz is very straightforward for the student. It is helping the student know, did I understand what I read? And do I remember what I read? Because candidly, I want you to know there are books in Spanish, and I use those to improve my Spanish. And I find there are times when I think I'm a better reader than I am, and I pick a book that is above my area, my level, and I then can't remember for sure what I read. My fault. My fault. I know better. Still do it to myself. So I want to say this is really important. The student understands and remembers. That's how we know it goes to long-term memory. All right. The best thing is the student gets immediate feedback. There are only 5 questions with 4 options for answers. And the student finds out immediately what I got right, what I got wrong. This is another, in fact, input piece. So see how really nice this is. Notice you're not doing any of it as the teacher. You don't have to. Okay. Now here's the Spanish version of the book. I'm just showing you. You can see there's the cover of it down there. She's highlighting words here too. And notice her personal dictionary is still there. When she hears those words read in Spanish, even if she hasn't been taught Spanish decoding yet, you bet she can, if she wants to, put those in there. This dictionary is hers. and see how she's now working with it. You will see different students work differently with this. Okay, just want to be candid that that's what personalization to the ultimate really is. All right. Notice here's another page, same thing. Oh, she's done some movement. She's taken some things out. That means to her mind, she's learned it. Don't take up space. You don't have to. I do have down here on the bottom these little headphones. That is to remind you, this is listening. So, and the nice thing is, even if she's not decoding, because this tracks as it's being read, you'd be surprised how much decoding students learn from this. Okay. The other thing on this is I've added now another journal entry for cognates. This is so cool. This is really where now Sophia goes, oh, these two languages connect. Of course they do. And I have a way to connect them, even though I'm not being given instruction in the classroom in Spanish. I am now connecting them and my repertoire is growing. Okay, this is the English version of the same book. Obviously, Sophia is now going to start to go, whoa, there's lots of new words here. Does she need all of those? No. You know, she doesn't need, no, I don't even know what an acorn weevil is, except I see it's a bug. You know, that is not something that is going to decide whether or not she masters that standard. But if Sophia is a student who likes doing all of that, she gets to do all of that here. See, her journal has grown. You can see that. She's doing whatever works for her. She can also get rid of words. This is just an amazing, amazing product. If I were teaching in the classroom today, I would use this instantly. All right, now we've worked on that kind of stuff. This is still that same English book. You just saw this page, but now we're going to ask her to record herself reading this. And this is down here a little, you can see it, microphone. Going on, what's that, a microphone? And she records herself. You can ask her to record herself reading a passage, reading her notes, practicing pronunciation, any of those things. You can ask her to do what task you want her to do. Then down here, although you can't see it well, she can listen to how she did and submit it to you. You get to hear it. Think about that. You get to hear how she's processing this, because we know when people produce verbally, you can tell what kind of processing is going on. It's really valuable to her, and it's really valuable to you. Okay, another quiz, another book, another quiz. There's also quiz in Spanish, by the way. I'll just tell you that. I just didn't show you that. But again, this lets you know what is she getting from this. And notice, here's the one reason I decided to show this quiz question, and that is, notice that she forgot that it was a weevil for a raccoon. That's not really important. I mean, she replied it was a weevil as opposed to it's a rattlesnake. That's not really a critical thing. So for her, she can get the correct answer from the feedback, but it's not a do or die in terms of her mastering the standard. It's just a detail that's like, oh, okay, yeah, I forgot that part. See how it's not high stakes, but it's important. All right. I showed this last question because when there are content words that are heavy into subject matter area, they also tend to show up in the questions, which is super nice. These 3 words matter. And I promise you, these 3 words were in her dictionary and highlighted. So you can see that question is actually something that you will be happy to know she answered correctly. Okay. All right. This is the last book. You can see there's the picture down there, and you can see it's a higher level reading in English. You can totally see that, but her dictionary is still there. This is one where there's low frequency words like grizzly, for example, but there's not that many that are critical to her achievement of the standard. So she doesn't have to know grizzly, for example. Bears tells you enough. So you're not in a position of determining, did she pick up every single word out of that book? It's not necessary. It's what you're getting is she's getting the content of the book and she is learning new words. And it's the point that matters the most. Owls, tigers, and sharks are more common, words, higher frequency words than grizzly. So see how it will work that way. But also notice this repeats those content area vocabulary words, those academic words, omnivores, predators, carnivores, prey. Those are coming through these books, and that's because you chose based on the standard. All right. I highlighted this one just because these books also have a lot of pictures in them that help processing. But again, even though this is a second grade 9th-month book, most of the words are still higher frequency. And if you support by starting with a book lower than that, then you get a student to this book by doing that. All righty. This is again, same kind of thing. You're going to read, you're going to record, you're going to submit, you're going to do all of the same tasks, irrespective of the book, irrespective of the language proficiency level. The key thing here is starting with the right level books. Okay, that is the most critical component that you do that, because the input you give is the input that determines language growth. All right, for you, here's another one thing you have to look at. You're the teacher. You need to follow how your students are doing on those quizzes, on those comprehension quizzes. And this is why. We know from decades of research that if students score at least 80% or higher on their quizzing, they are growing. We need that. Absolutely need that. So what that tells us, if the average quiz score is less than that, we're probably picking books that are too hard for the student. Or they read it last week and just now took the quiz and don't remember what they read. So see, there's always alternatives. And that's why it's important to have a big picture sense of it, going forward in the application. All right, so this is how we do it. The book quiz, notice I have that exclamation point. Yes, 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 yes. So 2 things that are so critical. The first one, the right text. The last one, the book quiz. In between, interaction needs to be purposeful. It's really important. And it's also super important that they listen to while reading. Super important. If we don't build oral language, we don't get better outcomes for the rest of the skills. Students need that support, and that's why we want to make sure that's part of this. And that's what I have for you today. So I would love to take questions from you.
Give people a few more moments if they have any questions.
It's a lot to process, and I know that.
So if I'm understanding this right, Carol, because this is not my area of expertise, I really wish when I was teaching, I would have known some of these things. So the goal is to build their oral language. Wait, I don't think that's right. So I'm trying to build their oral language while building their content knowledge at the same time. How am I doing that? Is that right? So by getting them books at the right level in a language they know, then we can help build their content while we're also helping build their English.
It's a simultaneous thing. If we take advantage of the home language, just to be
Okay.
totally candid, if we let them to continue, if we support continuing the development of knowledge in the home language, while we are trying to build their ability to learn how to express that in the second language, which is
In
English,
English.
big payoff.
Oh,
Big
okay.
payoff. The language these children come with is a huge asset.
So really, we've been
Huge.
ignoring it in English only classrooms, not because we mean to, but like sometimes I never knew how to help kids that, and that came to my classroom when I was teaching who didn't speak English.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really, I'll just be honest and tell you my own experience has been that for most classroom teachers, they do not receive this kind of instruction in how to do that. We tend to give them bilingual dictionaries, absolutely no question. And there's nothing wrong with bilingual dictionaries, but that is just not adequate. And a bilingual dictionary will never build oral language skills, ever. It's not possible. And so when you have the ability to provide a resource that is, let's say, supplemental because you already have classroom time that you are committed to. If you can provide a supplemental resource that is the most efficient, building on home language, building the oral language skills of English while doing that, you make an outcome that is completely different. You get a completely different outcome for your students. You won't be sitting there in your classroom with that content area vocabulary, the academic words up on the board, constantly going, okay, this word, you won't, because you have had a way of building it from the home language. And fortunately for the Spanish-English connection, there are so many cognates that most of the well, in fact, academic words transcend. There's so many Latin based, right? Number one. And number two, here's another advantage for Spanish speaking home language. Because Spanish is a heavily Latin based language, everyday Spanish words are actually academic words in English, higher level. So if we are insightful about supporting the home language, and we're talking Spanish here, that will transfer over unbelievably to the English only classroom.
That makes more sense.
Carol, actually, piggybacking on what you're saying, Esmeralda posted a question and she said, and it's kind of like down the vein with what you're saying, when a student doesn't understand what you are teaching in English, is it correct to talk to them in their home language?
Oh, personally, I always say yes.
I agree.
Yeah. Why? I mean,
Yeah, I do too. If I
oh
could, I
yeah,
would.
yes.
Right?
Yeah, no, there are places where they're not allowed to do that. And I find that inhumane, number
I
one.
do too.
I mean, that's just like seriously. And the alternative is to let the child sit there and still not know what is being taught. When you have that ability, if you already know this, if you speak the student's home language, oh my gosh,
How lucky that.
never mind acceptance and all of that.
Another question came from Susanna. What application are you using to assign the books?
I'm not sure I understand that question. Clarify it for me.
Assign the books.
So, okay. I think I got it. If I don't, you stop me. So the Mayan digital library I showed you actually has the ability to search standards. So I went in and searched 5th grade next generation science standards. Whatever standards you use, you can look in there, and most every state is represented in there. But even at that, you can do keywords. So if you have, for example, let's say you're looking at your science textbook and the topic, let's just say it's food chains. Let's just say it's that. You can go into that system, Mayan, and type in food chains. All the books that are related to food chains, ecosystems, all of that will pop up, both English and Spanish. And then you can filter for which language and which reading level, fiction, nonfiction, all of that.
I have another question for you, Carol. I know we talked about science and English in this example for Sophia, but the same thing will apply for teaching math, right? The reason why I bring it up, reason why I bring it up is that we have PLNs that we meet, and that's one of the things that has come up significantly from dual language or emerging languages schools, where some teachers might feel that the student is falling behind because they don't understand the language, but that doesn't mean that they don't understand math.
Correct. It is so true. And so here's one of the things about the math books in this system. There are two things. Let me start from the first part. The first part is my own experience in teaching and examining math for my students in English, okay, when I was teaching English, is that math tends to use a lot of low frequency, funny vocabulary, word problems. I mean, they do, these are words that are on nobody's list anywhere. I mean, there's always a wiggly worm or something, you know what I mean? And that, you know what I'm saying? And that always interferes with processing if you have to stop and go, what is that word? Because there is the thinking that, well, it's just the math problem. They don't really need to read all of it. That is just not true. I completely disagree with that. 100%. I think calculation is different than, Having said that, the Mayan math books use low frequency vocabulary at lower levels, which helps fill in some of those funky words while it's doing math. So it is not testing math, it is input to the student, which for me is the way to go. I mean, we have to find a way to get more input to our students for them to grow their language. And as a teacher in the classroom, I cannot talk all day long and still give enough. It's not humanly possible. I need to have a way to supplement so that my students can achieve their potential in my classroom.
Hmm. From a Spanish-born, coming from a Spanish-born, Spanish is my first language. I went to a dual language school and I was impressed with all the cognates that I didn't even know existed, that they were so similar. So, I mean, me as an adult, I can only imagine a child seeing how many of them are similar
Light up.
and giving them the confidence, right? The confidence of broadening the vocabulary and energy to keep going, to just
Totally. Totally. The cognate, once you get the concept of cognates as a learner or a teacher, it's just like magic. It is magic. You just can't, and yeah, yeah. And that's, I kept, once I was exposed to this product that Renaissance has, I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, it's got different languages. It's like this. I mean, I would use it in an instant, in a heartbeat. If I were teaching right now, I would have this in my classroom because I used to try to do things with not as much insight as those books have. And I would just, sometimes I think that I didn't do my students a real service at that time, um, but I've learned more, thankfully. So.
Well, the good thing is that it meets the students at where they are and give them a little nudge to keep on learning.
Correct, because again, it's just simply talking about, let's say, that fifth grade science standard. We already know there's a classroom textbook that covers that standard, and everyone who already is at that level can read that, no problem, and the teacher's teaching to it. And all of that is fabulous, and that's what you want to have happen. But if I don't read at that level yet, or I don't understand English at that level yet, and that language of instruction is English, I still need to be ideally taking advantage of everything I bring to the table, which is normal home language level, and going, okay, well, how do we teach that knowledge while we're building the language of English that goes with it? Just amazing. Just amazing. And I have sat personally in more French classrooms where I did not know what was being said. So I lived that life too. It is so painful. So painful. And you think you're stupid. You think it's you. And it's just language and finding a way to, yeah.
Yeah, and if you did it as an adult, can you imagine just a child going through that? It could set them back if it's not addressed properly.
Completely. Completely. And they would, imagine then you're the parents and the parents are like, well, my child's behind. I don't know why, blah, blah, blah. I mean, those are just painful things when there are ways to work with the assets people bring. It's up to us.
Oh, we got another question. How do you grade those students who are struggling how do you grade those students who are struggling understanding English?
You mean grade level tests and things?
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that is just grading. How do you assign a grade to those students who are struggling understanding English?
I don't have the answer to that. I'm just going to tell you because I'm grateful that I'm not responsible for doing that right now. But I don't know what the answer is to that. I thankfully am not the person making that decision. Mine is, how can I help make a difference on the first end?
That's a conversation that I think transcends even language. Why are we grading students? And in particular, why would we grade them who are struggling with English? That is definitely a philosophical question, isn't it? Maybe not for this particular conversation, but it's not a bad question It's a really good question, but not one that can be answered in a minute or two.
Thank you, Esmeralda, for the question. Very
Yes, thank you.
thought-provoking.
If she finds the answer, she could probably retire.
Yes.
Write a book about it.
Yes,
Mhm.
but please don't write a book.
But yeah, write a book instead and stay with us.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's it. No more questions are coming in.
Well, if there are no more questions, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for attending today's NCEA webinar. NCEA continuously tries to improve the quality of our services for our members based on feedback. We will use your input to inform future work and improve services. And the survey that I've just dropped in the chat will take about 5 minutes to complete. If you are interested in a certificate of attendance, please include your email address and name at the end of the survey. And since your certificate will be sent via an automated email, please be sure to check your spam if you do not see an email within a few minutes. But thank you again to Dr. Carol, Dr. Julie Vogel, Miss Maria Delamo, just for hosting us today. We're very grateful for that time. So thank you again, everyone. And again, the survey is in the chat.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.